Do you see the red? Yes, it's recording. I see it now.
Okay, great.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our Paper Dolls Then and Now discussion. My name is Juanita, and I'm the Literature Department Supervisor here in the Art and Lit Department. The photo that you see behind me are steps. They're the magnificent steps at Parkway Central that lead to the second floor where the Art and Literature Department is here. Public. We are open to the public, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And we hope to see you here when you come to see the long-awaited Precious Paper Dolls exhibit until October 14th. This exhibit was 2 years in the making when Martha Raively and I first talked about having it back in 2020. Fast forward 2 years later, we have added this wonderful panel discussion to include the Children's Literature Research Collection and their growing paper doll collection, curated by Christopher Biss Brown. I'll introduce Chris in a bit. A couple of things to note. Please bookmark Free Library. Well, it'll be in the chat, freelibrary.org/lit. So you can stay updated for our upcoming programs here in the Art and Literature Department. You'll receive a newsletter that will keep you posted on new materials that we purchase, as well as upcoming programs. There will be a question and answer portion after this discussion, so please be sure to post your comments and your questions in the chat. So now I will introduce our moderator for this wonderful panel. Christopher A. Biss Brown is the curator of the Children's Literature Research Collection at the Free Library of Philadelphia. Biss Brown is an active member of the Association for Library Services to Children, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, the Guild of Book Workers, and is serving as a judge for the Young Adult Literature for the 2021 through 2023 LA Times Book Prizes. As you can imagine, he is also exhausted. Chris?
Thanks so much, Juanita, for the wonderful introduction. And hello to everyone watching at home or watching later live on YouTube. Thank you for joining us today's talk, Paper Dolls Then and Now. We're fortunate enough to be joined by 3 leading voices in the paper doll world, Martha Raively, Valerie Keller, and Rudy Miller. Now, before we start today's conversation, I have a small amount of housekeeping to do, so please bear with me. As Juanita mentioned, this presentation is being held at the Free Library of Philadelphia. We have over 50 locations across the city, and a free library card is available at no cost to anyone who lives, works, pays taxes, or goes to school in the city of Philadelphia. In addition, anyone who lives in the state of Pennsylvania can also obtain a library card without charge. This program is a joint venture between the Literature Department and the Children's Literature Research Collection, and I've marked off both on this map. As you can see, we're both located on the second floor of Parkway Central Library. And I've also marked off this exhibition that we've alluded to in our conversation. So let's talk a little bit about each location. As mentioned, the Art Department is located in Parkway Central Library, which resides on Benjamin Franklin Parkway. Now, at time of recording, the hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're still building up staff, so we don't have weekend hours yet, but if you're watching this later on YouTube, check out the link, freelibrary.org/lit, and you'll see the updated hours. You can also contact the department by emailing them directly at ereflit@freelibrary.org. Those are all on the screen. Outside of the art department and the literature department, you'll find the exhibition Precious Paper Dolls, a Treasured Art Form. This entire exhibition is part of the private collection of Martha Raively, who's going to be speaking later today, and the exhibition is on display through October 14th. The Children's Literature Research Collection is part of the Special Collections Division of the Free Library of Philadelphia. We're one of the premier centers for the study of children's literature in the United States. The collection engages the public about the importance of children's literature in our culture and our society, We expand the knowledge base of patrons through research support, and we foster new ideas through displays and exhibitions. And if you want to learn a little bit more about our collection, we have some links for you as well. You can visit the collection directly by visiting freelibrary.org/CLRC. And you can learn more about our special collections by visiting us at freelibrary.org/special collections. We have an online repository that's full of activities, games, fun, and past recordings of programs. And all those are available at bit.ly/fun with FLP spec call. And when I'm no longer in the hot seat, I'll add the links if Juanita hasn't done that already. We do have a companion show that Juanita mentioned that's currently on display on our 3rd floor in our rare book department. We're including historic paper dolls from our collections, including By Polly This Dolly. It's a temperance paper doll that was featured in issue 69 of Paper Doll Review back in 2018. We also have on display a few pieces of original artwork of the Marguerite character that was created by Gail Halley, and modern examples such as this spread from 2020's Wait, What?, which uses paper doll artwork to open up conversations about sexuality and gender. And finally, let's talk about an upcoming exhibition at the library, Chronicling Resistance. The roots of activism in Philadelphia run deep, and local archives hold innumerable stories of resistance. But many of these stories, those that historically center on marginalized peoples, have been diminished, erased, neglected, and buried. Chronicling Resistance, the exhibition, reveals what 8 local activists, cultural organizers, and artists unearthed when they dug deep into the same Philadelphia archives that have historically excluded their voices and their perspectives. Through archival items, rare books, oral histories, and original artwork, Chronicling Resistance counters the systematic erasure of Black, Brown, and LGBTQ+ people from the historical record. It breaks silences, and it uncovers new ways of understanding and enacting resistance. You can see this dynamic and unique exhibition at Parkway Central Library from the ground floor all the way up to the 3rd floor rare book department, and a companion exhibition at our satellite exhibition at our branch in South Philadelphia. The exhibitions will run from September 22nd through December 31st. So thank you so much for your patience and all that housekeeping. And let's get started in our conversation. As I mentioned, we are joined today by 3 leading voices in paper dolls. Martha Raively is a paper doll collector and a former librarian at the Free Library Philadelphia, where she served as both a children's librarian and later as the children's material book selector. She's written for Paper Doll Review and was recently featured in the 2020 book Aprons, Paper Dolls, which was illustrated by Judy M. Johnson and edited by Julie Ann Matthews. We're also joined by artist Valerie Keller. She holds a BA in radio, film, and television from Temple University, and her work has been featured at several conventions, notably creating the paper doll of model and actress Danielle Luna for the 2017 the Philadelphia Paper Doll Convention's Dress-A-Doll. And I'll mention that Valerie also co-hosted that conference, and she also serves as a co-host for the regional annual luncheon in Morgantown. Our final panelist is Eileen Rudisill Miller, who originally trained as a fashion illustrator. She spent her career drawing the human figure, first drawing fashions for department stores, and later designing dolls and figures for the Franklin Mint. While continuing to design products for the collectibles industry, she's become well known internationally for her paper doll work. Over the last 10 years, she's produced over 50 coloring books and paper dolls for Dover Publications and Paper Studio Press, as well as over 70 self-published paper doll sets in her Etsy store. So I'm going to switch now. Martha and I are sharing the room, and I'm going to switch to her so you can see her smiling face and introduce Martha to you all.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our program, Paper Dolls Then and Now. It was designed to enhance the exhibit of paper dolls from my collection, which I recently installed in glass cases at the Free Library of Philadelphia, Parkway Central on 19th and Vine in Philadelphia, and to which the library has added 2 additional glass cases of paper dolls from their own special collections. I am a paper doll collector, and I like to say I've collected since I was in 2nd grade, because I saved almost all of the paper dolls that I bought, cut out, and played with as a child of the 1950s. and I still have them. However, I really started building a collection as an adult in 1985, when just by chance, I discovered that there were paper doll collectors and enthusiasts all over the United States who like to get together at parties, lunches, and even national conventions to share information about the art form known as paper dolls. In my portion of the program, I'm going to show you very briefly what has happened over the years in the world of paper dolls. What I will present is only a drop in the ocean of information about this topic. At home, I have a collection of about 30 books of research done on the history of paper dolls, the art of paper dolls, how to draw them, how to collect them, how to preserve them. The latest one came out in 2019. It's called Paper Dolls, Fragile Figures, Enduring Symbols. And as much as I hate to say this, this paperback book is now out of print. The book itself is still available, however, as electronically, as either a Nook book or a Kindle book. You can see just how electronically savvy I am. So let's start with the basics. What is a paper doll? More specifically, what is it that paper doll collectors collect when they say that they collect paper dolls? Well, paper dolls are figures, usually human, sometimes animal, sometimes inanimate, like a teddy bear, that are made out of paper or sometimes cardboard, to which a whole bunch of dresses, outfits accompany them. Usually you have to cut them out yourself, but they're drawn so they fit precisely over the figure and are held onto the figure by a series of tabs that are folded down around the shoulders, sometimes at the waist, and occasionally along the legs. Put this back just a little bit. I'd like to thank Jenny Taliadoros of Paper Studio Press for giving us permission to use 3 dresses from a paper doll book she published called Stripes. It was created by David Wolf and Julie Allen Matthews. Up. Well, oh, there's the dolls on that side, and this is the front cover on this side. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like inside, the dolls that are used on our exhibition are indicated by a black arrow, which I hope that you can see. But this gives you an idea of the entire book and how charming it is and how bright and colorful the artists have made it. The other good thing about it is that the front and back cover provides you with lots of information about the topic of stripes in fabrics. Now, although we call them paper dolls, the material used for this art form also extends to fabric, magnetic sheets, wood, usually with hidden magnets in them, as well as many other flat materials like stickers, vinyl clings, do you remember color forms, and or foam sheets. And I'm going to show you some examples. Here, for example, is Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse. It's done in fabric, stiffened fabric, and the clothes also are in stiffened fabric with Velcro attached so that you can put them on the doll and they stick. Magnets are also used for paper dolls. Here's one that's good for a refrigerator and children can play with it on the refrigerator. Here is the outfit and it sticks magically onto the doll. And one I particularly like are wooden dolls with magnets embedded into them. The outfits have magnets on the back and they just stay magically on the doll. This one is nice in that you can turn it around and there's a doll on the other side and you can dress her too. Artists are still I wanted to mention that paper dolls even exist as pixels. I don't have any of these, but you can get apps where you can electronically dress a paper doll. Artists are still creating them in incredibly imaginative ways, and they serve all kinds of purposes other than the one that everybody assumes, which is to entertain a child. Now that we know what they are, let's talk about where they came from. They started to appear around 1750 in the courts of European kings and queens and in the fashion centers of Paris, London, Vienna, and Berlin. They were handmade and hand-painted and intended only for adults. Here is an example. This one was created in 1790, probably as an adult entertainment. The envelope that holds this doll is written in French, stating that it is called the English doll and that it was published in Germany. There's strong evidence that other paper dolls were made so that dressmakers could show their clients the latest fashions that they could make for them. In addition, they were also used to advertise theatrical productions, as shown in this 1930s paper doll. This is one of 3 paper dolls we know of that depicts ballerina Marie Taglioni, famous in the 1830s and 40s. Beside her is a sheet of clothing for one of those Taglioni dolls, and not necessarily this one. Are you surprised that paper dolls for their first 60 years or so were not for adults? Well, there are 2 basic reasons. First, in 1750, paper was very rare, so adults would never have given paper to a child to play with. Secondly, back when parents just didn't buy, back in those times, parents just didn't buy toys for their children. Children were regarded as adults in training. Instead, they would have been given a tool such as needle and thread in order to learn something. It is believed that the first manufactured paper doll, that is, it was made by machine rather than handmade, was Little Fanny. First made in England in 1810, Little Fanny eventually made its way to the United States for sale. When American publishers saw how well it was selling, they began copying it and putting their own names on it. This one is either by a company in Boston or one in Philadelphia. She was part of an instructional storybook about a little girl who was vain and selfish, but learned over time to be kind and generous. So you see, it wasn't really a toy, it was a learning tool. In the 1850s in America, a couple of things happened. First, there were now about 400 paper mills here. Paper was becoming easier and cheaper to obtain. And I'd like to add something in here for you fellow Philadelphians. The first paper mill in the United States was built in 1649, and it was situated in an area known as Germantown near Philadelphia. And the owner was a Mr. Rittenhouse. And you Philadelphians will be able to recognize those names. Secondly, childhood playtime was becoming more acceptable, so the parents were becoming more willing to buy toys for their children. As paper dolls grew in popularity, US publishers began hiring American artists to create new ones. The most prolific paper doll publisher was McLaughlin Brothers. This McLaughlin paper doll was named Sealy, introduced in 1900, but reprinted in 1904 under a different name, Edna, in a book with other paper dolls. Paper dolls are and were often reused in new books, just slightly altered or renamed. In the early 1900s, many more publishers began selling paper dolls, including some companies well known for other types of products. An interesting example is Denison's, who sold boxes, labels, tags, and crepe paper, usually to businesses. Denison began producing novelty paper dolls that featured the new paper called crepe paper. The cardboard dolls had movable arms and legs. The outfits printed on this crepe paper were easy to cut out. They were then pasted onto one half of a paper dress form, which was then folded in half and slipped over the head of the doll. At the bottom center, you can just barely see one of these forms. On the back side, you can see a yellow dress that has been pasted onto that side, and then it's folded down and slipped over the head of the doll. To the right, you see a doll fully dressed in a crepe paper outfit, decorated with a lace doily by a child, probably 100 years ago. Also, in the early 1900s, paper dolls began appearing in magazines and newspapers and were used to advertise products. Companies found that if they included a paper doll with their product, they'd sell more of that product. Certainly with magazines, this was true. Children begged their parents to buy specific magazines so that they could cut out the monthly paper doll. In the early 1900s, there was Betty Bonnet, Dolly Dingle, Letty Lane, and Polly Pratt, to name a few, but the most famous one was introduced in 1951, Betsy McCall. Betsy appeared nearly every month in McCall's magazine for 44 years, ending only in 1995. So by the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, paper dolls were more popular than they had ever been before or would ever be again. They were carried in drugstores, dime stores, and large department stores. I'm going to show you now paper dolls from 3 of the major paper doll publishing companies during this time. In the first image here, you see here are dolls from Merrill Publishing Company, which is now out of business. Many regard Merrill's dolls as among the loveliest, almost portrait-like. To the left is angel baby dolls. Babies were perennially popular subjects for paper dolls. Center stage is Girl Pilots of the Fairy Command, which came out during World War II when many patriotic and military sets were made. And far right is Slumber Party. You can just barely notice the subtitle at the bottom reads Teenage Girls. The 1940s was the time when the term teen or teenager started to become widely used and still is used today. Next is Saalfeld Publishers, also now out of business. To the left is Happy Birthday, because you know parties and party dresses were always popular in paper doll books, as were movie stars. The doll of Julie Andrews to the right is quite elegant. In fact, at this time, she was not a movie star. She was well known as a Broadway star. Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music came later. And here we have Shirley Temple, an extraordinarily beloved little movie star of the 1930s, who is credited with helping Saalfeld stay afloat during the time of the stock market crash and the following depression. Saalfeld won the rights to produce any publications made featuring Shirley, including storybooks, coloring books, paper dolls, and more. The third company is Whitman, which is still in business today, probably due to its contract with Walt Disney to produce products based on Walt Disney characters. In 1938, when Walt Disney released its first full-length animated film, Snow White, Whitman simultaneously released this box set of Snow White. Then, in the 1950s, when nearly every home had a TV, Disney auditioned talented children for his TV show, The Mickey Mouse Club. The children were called Mouseketeers, and Whitman released numerous sets based on them. Annette was the most popular, and many different sets were done of her over an 8-year period. As she grew older, she had a singing career and she starred in teen movies. Here is one of Whitman's many contributions to the popular topic of babies. And what's interesting about this set is that it depicts one child at 4 different ages: infancy, 18 months, 1 year, and 2 years. You might notice in nursery school paper dolls that the publisher gives the artist front cover credit, Queen Holden. In its early days, most paper doll books did not credit the artist unless they were very well known, and Queen Holden was. Her career as an artist spanned 60 years from 1928 to 1985 when her last paper doll was released. And I should probably amend that by saying that it was a 60-year career as a paper doll artist, although she did many other things too. She is known to collectors as the Queen of Paper Dolls. Imagine that. So, just so you know though, her parents did name her Queen, and she was born in the Philadelphia area, possibly Gladwin. And she lived there until in her teens, she moved with her family to New York City. Again, paper dolls are big in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And here we have Liz Taylor. I think the dolls are beautifully done. I think the clothes maybe could have been a little bit more glamorous, but there you have it. Judy Garland's book was done 2 years after her success as Dorothy in the classic movie The Wizard of Oz, which is why she looks like a young adult rather than little Dorothy. And here we have a set that Whitman published due to the popularity of this singing group on television. While the Lennon sisters were part of the Lawrence Welk show over a 6 or 7 year period, Whitman created about a dozen different sets of them. And as the group grew up on the show, so did the paper dolls. What I've shown you so far takes us through the 1950s. By the 1960s, there was so much competition from other types of toys that paper dolls were no longer hot ticket items. However, they did not disappear from the scene, and I think they even became a much better reflection of the United States. The remainder of my show and tell will be paper dolls from the 1970s to today. From 1968 to 1971, Diane Carroll starred in the first TV show featuring an African-American woman in a non-stereotypical role. She played a young widow supporting herself and young son in the profession of nursing. And here we have Lydia, an African-American teenager starring in her very own paper doll book. I've included one page of clothing here because I'm particularly drawn to decorative papers being used to create the outfits. And here's Rosebud. It's 1985 and babies are still popular. Hot Looks is unusual because all the dolls have the same pose so that all the clothes can be tried onto all of the dolls. By 1990, 3 African-American women had won the title of Miss America, and here's a paper doll to celebrate it. Although he got no credit for the art in this book, the artist for Miss America is Tom Tierney, considered to be the king of paper dolls. Although interestingly, his parents did not name him king. Dover publishers have done hundreds of Tom Tierney paper doll books and always give him front cover credit. In Favorite African-American Movie Stars, Tom depicts 16 movie stars from James Earl Jones to Denzel Washington to Oprah Winfrey, along with costumes for each and brief descriptions of the actor or actress's successes on the big screen. And here we have Keiki. New Jersey artist Diana Vining has provided a self-published Hawaiian girl shown with 3 Western-style outfits and 1 ethnic costume of hula skirt and lei of flowers. When the Japanese comic style of manga became popular in the United States, Dover Publishing Company put a stylish new spin on this Japanese cartoon craze with this book of paper dolls. And here we have a trio of paper dolls which are done by 2 publishing companies. The center one by Dover Publishing Company and the 2 on the right and the left by Paper Studio Press. These two publishers are pretty much the two publishers that seriously try to publish good paper doll books every year. The rest of the publishers that are doing them probably do one here, one there, but don't spend as much time as Paper Studio Press and Dover publishers do. At the left, in Broadway Sensations, artist Corey Jensen depicts 8 lovely female stars of Broadway, including Julie Andrews from My Fair Lady and Audra McDonald from Porgy and Bess. In the center is Girl Power by artist Eileen Rudisill Miller, a graduate of Moore College of Art here in Philadelphia, who has created 4 young women of diverse ethnic backgrounds with wardrobes of 23 outfits representing professions in the fields of science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. And to the right, in Kitchen Kitsch by Julie Allen Matthews, we have 2 friends, and I want you to notice that they are wearing eyeglasses, get together to cook up a storm and try on numerous recipe-related aprons. The book also features recipes such as Polynesian party punch. 2 years ago, artist David Wolf created this book on a nearly forgotten movie star. In the 1930s, a young Asian American woman, Anna May Wong, born and raised in California, won acclaim in many films, but found herself playing only stereotypical roles and today is almost forgotten. David is hoping this paper doll will change that. When artist Andrea Helen Smith recently began work on a book featuring nurses in the 1940s, she began reading up on the subject and found herself drawn to the stories of African American nurses who were eager to offer their skills, were initially rejected, but continued in their struggle to serve. In Nurse Jocelyn of the 1940s, Andrea provides information about these nurses and dedicates the book to all members of the medical field. I'm ending my show and tell with a fantasy paper doll by Alina Kaluri, Flutter, Paper Dolls from the Land of Fairy. Alina's sets are always fun to cut, and it's loads of fun to dress her dolls no matter what topic she has chosen to depict. So I hope that if you can, you'll come to the Free Library of Philadelphia, Parkway Central at 19th and Vine to view the exhibit Paper Dolls Now and Then and Now. I assure you that what you'll see in the 10 glass cases of the exhibit will not be a duplicate of anything I have shown you here today. In addition, let me refer you also to 2 websites where you'll find excellent information about this art form. paperdollreview.com and opdag.com. Are either of these shown on the website, Chris?
They are, I'm sorry, which website?
The website that everybody is looking at right now.
We can put them up. That's not a problem.
Okay, Chris informs me that he can put up these 2 websites so that you don't have to scramble around trying to find paper and pencil, but let me repeat, they are paperdollreview.com and opdag.com. That's OPDAG, which stands for Original Paper Doll Artists Guild. And those 2 websites will give you links to a lot of other wonderful paper doll websites. Now, what I challenge you to do is to start looking for this art form in your daily lives. Where will you find it? Will it be on a book cover, on a t-shirt, on an advertisement that you get in the mail, in a magazine, or a newspaper? You'll be surprised where they pop up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Martha. I'm just going to switch videos temporarily. One moment. And there was so much fantastic information covered there. And I think if eagle-eyed viewers should have noticed that Eileen Rudisill Miller was included in that show. And now we're about to jump into hearing from her. So without further ado, multiple published author, paper doll artist, Rudisill Miller.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Eileen Rudisill Miller, and I'm better known to everyone as Rudy, and I'm a paper doll artist. How did I get to be a paper doll artist? I got to be a paper doll artist the way many paper doll artists start out as a fashion illustrator. So I will share with you my, let's see. Coming in 1 second. My life as a commercial artist. So I've had 3 separate but overlapping careers: as a fashion illustrator, a product designer, and a paper doll artist. I grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and moved to Philadelphia to attend Moore College of Art and Design, where I majored in fashion illustration back in the day when fashion illustration was a viable profession. After graduation from Moore, I went to work in the advertising department at the Philadelphia department store Strawbridge and Clothier. My colleagues and I did the artwork for their ads, which ran in the newspaper. I did both the layout design and the final artwork. Though I wasn't the head illustrator at Strawbridge's, I got to do a lot of lingerie, cosmetics, and jewelry ads, which I loved doing. In my 4 years at Strawbridge's, I learned a lot about good design from my mentor and art director, Larry Brown. But little by little, Strawbridge's started using photography more and more in their advertising. The handwriting was on the wall. So I left and freelanced for a while. Eventually, I went to work for a discount department store called the Wilmington Dry Goods. The dry goods advertised in newspaper supplements that were anywhere from 16 to 48 pages. I was their women's ready-to-wear illustrator. We also had a men's illustrator, a children's illustrator, and a home goods illustrator. Eventually, at this job, I learned to produce a lot of work very quickly and still maintain the quality. I found my style, and it set me up for the rest of my career in terms of the value of the experience. You can see the body proportions were extremely elongated with small heads, as was typical of a fashion drawing, and notice the broad shoulders and the oversized clothes of the 1980s. After 4 years, the dry goods, who were one of the last illustration holdouts, went to photography. And now I could have stayed there art directing, photo shoots. I wanted to be an artist on the board. I needed to be drawing. Luckily, the Franklin Mint, the large collectibles company, was located nearby, and they were looking for a fashion illustrator to design porcelain dolls. If ever a job description had my name on it, it was this one, and I got the job. I became an artist in the design studio designing dolls, a job that incorporated my love of drawing, design, fashion, costume, and dolls. The design studio consisted of roughly 30 artists who did all the 2D visualizations for the large variety of products the Mint produced. I did the designs for numerous doll programs: Brides, Fabergé, Gibson, historical dolls, fantasy-themed dolls, fairies, angels, child dolls, and portrait dolls of royalty and movie stars. I learned all about product design at the Franklin Mint and designed not just dolls, but figurines, carousels, bell jars, snow globes, jewelry boxes, clocks, Fabergé eggs, music boxes, and so much more. Okay, here we go. The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind were popular subjects at the Franklin Mint. I became the go-to designer for many Cinderella programs: dolls, figurines, dioramas, bell jars, little sculpted eggs, and so on. Eventually, the Mint started creating vinyl dolls that came with trunks full of costumes. I loved working on these. Drawing a doll with many costumes was definitely the foreshadowing of my paper doll career. As you can see here in the drawing of the Guinevere doll in the lower left hand of this image. I spent 14 years in the design studio at the Franklin Mint. Sadly, in the early 2000s, the Mint was no longer the booming industry it once was. And in 2002, the design studio was dissolved and the original 1,500 employees in the company pared down to only 15. So in 2002, I started my own business in my third floor home studio. And this year marks the 20th anniversary of E.R. Miller Designs. Freelance work as a product designer was easy to find after leaving the Mint. The many people who had worked there scattered throughout the country, working for other giftware companies, and gave freelance work to all the Mint designers. I did product design for various companies such as the Bradford Exchange, the Hamilton Company, Bendel's, Bath Body Works, the Noble Collection, and Lennox. I designed charms, snow globes, jewelry boxes, and so much more. Lennox has been and still is a steady client. I've designed many giftware collections for them. A collection might consist of a large and small vase, a bowl, a teapot, and a picture frame. I've also done numerous figurines and ornaments for them. Santas, snowmen, lots of angels, and so on. In 2006, I had a slow period work-wise. So I sent some samples of my work to Dover Publications. I got a call from Diane Rubens, who asked me if I would like to do a princess coloring book. What a question. Of course, I would love to do a princess coloring book for Dover. That book led to several other princess-themed projects and finally a princess paper doll. Then we did mermaid paper dolls and fairy paper dolls and so on. I'm still working with Diane and have done over 50 books for Dover, including many paper doll projects. In recent years, I've done several books for Dover on the royals, Queen Elizabeth, Harry and Meghan, Kate and Meghan, and coming soon for release in November, a new Princess Diana paper doll. I've also done books for Paper Studio Press, a doll publisher in Maine. Here are the little girls in their, whoops, wrong picture. Here are the little girls in their dolls with matching costumes that I did for Paper Studio Press. I've also built up a collection of self-published paper dolls that I sell in my Etsy shop online. More paper dolls and a link to my Etsy shop. So I wanted to take you through my process a little bit. Here's a step-by-step process for the creation of an Audrey Hepburn in Roman holiday paper doll. Every project begins with doing research. In this case, photos of Audrey Hepburn and the various costumes she wore in the film. Using the reference as a guide, I begin with rough sketches on tracing paper. I work out the portrait and the costumes in layer after layer of tracing paper until the drawing is right, all the while making sure that the costume fits the doll exactly. Sorry, I'm having trouble advancing my program.
Rudy, I think that happens when you have clicked on one of the elements of a screen. So maybe you need to go to the thumbnail.
Thank you. When the drawing is final, I place it on my copier and feed marker paper into the machine, which then copies the drawing onto the marker paper. After the drawing is transferred to the marker paper, I color it using Chart Pack ad markers. The final details are rendered in Prismacolor pencils. I then scan all the drawings into Photoshop and format it for printing. And voila, the final piece, Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday. So I wanted to end on a personal note. I've always been a girly girl. I love dolls, fashion, costume, movies. And ironically, my husband Jeff and I have two very sports obsessed boys. We do have two female pets, a cat and a dog, so I'm not completely outnumbered gender-wise in our house. Our boys are in their 20s now, and here's a paper doll I did of them when they were little. Here are Ben and Zach and their Halloween costumes and their play clothes, along with our first Sheltie, Abby. Oh, P.S. Here's a recent paper doll I did of our 3-year-old Sheltie, Scout. As you can see, she believes squirrels are real, and she is a Philly Teams fan. Thank you so much for listening, and that is the end.
Thank you so much, Rudy. I agree, squirrels are real. And I would love to know if you're going to continue doing the boys as they get older. Still, you need to do a second edition where they're adults.
Oh gosh, I know, right? We'll see.
We're going to turn over now to our next artist and also organizer of the Philadelphia Paper Doll Convention, co-organizer, Valerie Keller. So Valerie, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. I just want to show you that I'm wearing a paper doll t-shirt. This is a paper doll by artist Eileen Rudisill, who also did those fairy paper dolls that you saw at the end of Martha's presentation, and these sort of paper doll like earrings that my sister made for me, which keep turning around to the back side, but this is the front side. So let me share my screen. I'm going to just dive right in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the people who love paper dolls. And like so many people who bond over a shared interest, we love to get together. You can see sometimes you will go anywhere where we just can have a table to spread out our paper dolls. That picture on the left is from my paper doll club, and you might notice that over on the end here, Rudy and Martha are part of the club. And here we are meeting in the food court of a mall in Reading, Pennsylvania. So we have many ways of gathering. We have paper doll clubs, regional paper doll parties, and you guessed it, conventions. And I'll go into detail about all of these in a bit. This is the official list of paper doll conventions, starting with one in 1984. There were some conventions and events billed as mini conventions. There were paper doll parties before that, going as early, as far as I know, going as early as the 60s. But 1984 is when it became more consistent and coordinated with an annual national convention that would happen every summer, except for pandemic years. And it is notable that each convention has a theme. So this list includes the city or town where the convention took place and also the themes. Okay, now I'm having advanced problem. There we go. So one of my favorite things about the paper doll community is that it's a very creative group of people. Most people who like paper dolls also enjoy drawing, painting, coloring, and have great skills with the scissors. We are probably, as a group, the most skilled scissor operators you will ever find anywhere. This is a paper doll set that I had when I was a tween. It's from Whitman and published in 1972. And you can see the dolls and a sampling of the clothes. But then I also drew my own clothes. And you can tell by the style, even the magic marker that I used, you can tell it was the 70s, clearly. If you couldn't afford to buy paper doll sets, or you want to just, try something different or do it yourself, there's a lot of things you can do. My mother used to go to the local sewing store and ask if she could have their sewing pattern catalogs, the old ones that they were getting rid of. And a lot of times they said yes. So she would bring them home and my sister and I would go through and look for figures to make into paper dolls. So like this doll on the left, she's a good figure. She's complete, doesn't have any writing over top of her. And I chose this other catalog page on the right. Obviously it's from an earlier time, but sometimes we ended up finding some of those at yard sales, flea markets, whatever. So you look for an outfit that might fit the doll, and then you cut with your scissors, and there you go. Now your doll has a new coat, and you can see it's a little oversized, but then you can go back and refine it a little bit so it fits better, or you can just leave it like this because it does fit, and the shoes remarkably fit very well. So that's something we used to do. Another thing would be to look in fashion magazines and look for a photo where the an article of clothing is bigger than the doll's dress, and then you could draw an outline of the dress and cut with your scissors, and then your doll has a new dress. I forgot to add the tabs. Normally you would add tabs to fold over the doll, and of course the doll would be cut out. And there's so many other things you can use to make your own paper dolls. These are just a few of them. But out of this practice came something that is one of the most consistent and longest standing traditions of the paper doll community. It's something we call dress-a-doll. So the concept is that every person who's going to be part of an event will get the same doll, get a copy of the same doll, and then whoever wants to can make clothes for the doll. And this is part of nearly every type of gathering that we do, and anyone can do it. I love the fact that it's very egalitarian. You don't have to be a trained artist. You don't have to have skills at drawing dolls. If all you want to do is make clothes, this is a chance. And here is a display of a dress-a-doll from a convention. This doll happens to be one that was made by Rudy Miller. And so at the convention, they took all the outfits that people made and made this display on poster board. And then another place where dress-a-dolls could be found is in this publication that you've already heard about a little bit, called Paper Doll Review. It's a quarterly magazine, and it's really notable as a central hub for the paper doll community. It's one of the ways that we keep in touch and see what's going on, and it just makes you feel in the loop about things, and you can contribute to it. And here is the publisher of Paper Doll Review, Jenny Taliadoros, and this is her at the most recent convention in 2022 on sales day, and she's selling paper doll books because the other branch, or part of the Paper Doll Review family, is Paper Studio Press, which publishes paper doll books. So there she is selling her books. But as far as the magazine goes, as you may imagine, publishing a magazine is a ton of work, and it doesn't get done without help. So here's Jenny's team. We have Martha on the left. She edits and writes articles. David Wolf is next. He's a paper doll artist who does a lot of work on the magazine. Julie Allen Matthews does a lot of graphic work on the magazine. And Lorna Thermopoulos is, I can't remember her title, but she is co-editor, I believe. And then there are, oh, I'm having that advance problem. Then there are the many, many people who contribute to the magazine. People write articles, draw paper dolls, participate in the dress-a-doll. It's a very community run, or not community run, but it's a collaborative effort with the whole community. And here is a recent dress-a-doll from one of the issues. The subject was Katie Keene, who was a 1940s comic book character. And it was a comic book that would have a paper doll in every issue. So it's kind of a nice nod to that history. And you can see some of the variety of outfits, and all the clothes are submitted by the readers. So, okay, now on to conventions. What do we do at these conventions? They have expanded over the years. Today's conventions typically start on a Wednesday with an optional tour of the local area. Some people do that. Other people really get started on Thursday and then they end on Sunday morning. And of course, we have a sales room. That is sort of the bedrock of every paper doll event. You know, we want to buy new paper dolls and we want to sell paper dolls. And as you can see, people often find new treasures. We have programs where people speak on a topic and share their knowledge. Usually it's about paper dolls, but not necessarily. But all of the ones you see here had a paper doll, at least had a paper doll tie-in. And from left to right, there's one about a treasured childhood paper doll that this woman's mother, I think it was mother or aunt, made a lot of clothes for. Then there was a fantastic presentation on Black paper dolls. The Spicy Secrets of British Musicians was about sort of gossip about pop music in England, but it also included many paper dolls. And then there was one about the Wild West, sort of Wild West shows and lore, and included also a lot of paper dolls and paper toys. So that's just a little sampling. And we do workshops because we are this creative bunch of people. We like to do hands-on crafty workshops. And you can see some examples here. You can see me enjoying making myself into a glamorous paper doll that was meant for the red carpet at the Oscars. We have something called Artist Showcase, where we get to see paper doll artists' latest work. We might see somebody actually working. Down here, you see artist Marilyn Henry with her pencil. She's working on a portrait as we watched. And here we see some original art by the artist David Wolf. He tends to make his faces larger size, and then they get shrunk down digitally to fit the paper doll. One year, there was a special artist showcase that where some of the artists who had a career in fashion illustration showed off their samples of their work. That one really blew me away. That was one of the things that sold me. It was like at my second convention, and I couldn't believe that I was seeing this, because I swear I recognize some of these. That one on the left, this one by Tom Tierney, I've just felt that recognition well up inside me. I'm sure I saw that one in magazines. Here's one by Rudy Miller, and here's a couple by Jim Howard, and this by David Wolf. And I just, after this artist showcase, I just felt like I was rubbing elbows with fashion illustration royalty.
Sorry, Val, can I just make a correction? That was not my illustration. I think it's Marilyn Henry's.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Didn't have captions to the photos. We also have something called a competition, where collectors bring some of their most rare and unusual examples to display. And for me, the competition has been a real education in paper dolls and paper doll history. A lot of these are museum quality items that you just wouldn't see anywhere. And for the collectors, it's really special because they get to show off things that otherwise might sit in storage and never get seen. And it's always fun when you win a prize, because the competition is judged and they give out ribbons. And as you can see, people get very excited about getting a ribbon. Every convention has souvenirs that will have to do with whatever the theme was. So this was from the Philadelphia convention with the 60s theme. And okay, this one I know is right. Here's a Jean Shrimpton paper doll by artist Rudy Miller. And all the artwork is donated. The conventions are a very community run, community supported activity. We don't have membership dues. We don't have a kitty. So everybody just pitches in and helps support the conventions. And one of the ways that we raise money is raffles. People donate all kinds of paper dolls and paper doll related things and fashion related things. And then you buy raffle tickets and put your tickets in the little bag for whatever items you want to win. And it's very exciting when you win that thing that you wanted. We also like to dress up. It's not required, it's optional. Not everyone gets into it, but a lot of us do like to dress up, and most conventions will have special themes, you know, might even be broken down every night at the banquet. There's a different theme. This was a convention where the overall theme was mayhem, murder, and mystery. I might be saying that in the wrong order, but the 3 M's. And just want to point a couple of things out. This woman in blue in the middle here, she was Mrs. Peacock from the game Clue, which I thought was really clever. We have a wonderful Cruella de Vil and a Maleficent. And here we have a couple who are portraying a TV show called Longmire. And you might be surprised to learn that the female member of the couple is none other than Martha Raively. And she did such a good job of her costume and staying in character, because Martha's usually smiling and she was very unsmiling, and a lot of people didn't even know who she was. And there's a lot more that happens. I just don't have time to tell you about all of it. It's an extravaganza, and by the end of it, you can get pretty tired. And that's Martha and her husband, Phil. I forgot to mention him. So, okay, what about the regional paper doll parties? So the conventions, as I said, are something like 4 to 5 days. Regional parties, generally speaking, are more like 1 to 2 days. They're sort of aimed at the local community, although sometimes people travel to get there. And they take place in a hotel. So this is some images from the regional paper doll luncheon that I co-host with Linda Ocasio. She's here in the middle. And this was, as you may guess, the theme was the 40s. So these are some of the costumes. Of course, we have a sales room. We also do raffles and freebies. I didn't really mention freebies for conventions. We do that there too, but that's, whoops, that's this image at the bottom. Just, you know, after the raffles are done, we usually clear off a couple tables and just put all kinds of things that people donate that are just free for you to have. And sometimes it gets a little hectic. People try to muscle up to the front of the line, but we try to be civilized. And then paper doll clubs. These are usually, we just meet for a few hours in an afternoon. And this is my local paper doll club, including my sister, my mother, and my niece. And here we are doing Dress a Doll. And these are pictures from a New York paper doll club that I also belong to. And we do things at the club like buying, selling, swapping, show and tell. You know, you want to share that great find that you just got. And of course, we have lunch. And as a community, not only do we like to get together, but we like to stay in touch. Again, one of the big ways we do this is through Paper Doll Review. And these web addresses will be in the Zoom chat for you to get. And these are just a few of the more recent issues. Notes. So yeah, so Paper Doll Review is a central hub for us. And I want to announce that Paper Doll Review has started a brand new Facebook group, which is so new that I don't want to try to describe it off the top of my head. So I'm going to read a quote from the website. Do you cut and dress your dolls? How do you store and display your paper dolls? Do you craft with paper dolls? Tell us and show us photos and videos. Are you a paper doll artist? Show us your work and provide links if your paper dolls are for sale. So this is a new way that the community can stay in touch, and also people who are interested, don't know much about it, can find out. I hope that you have gotten the idea from all of our presentations, that it's a very vibrant and interesting community. And I just want to show you that this came in the mail this very morning. It's the latest issue of Paper Doll Review. It's the animal paper dolls issue. Very exciting. I can't believe it came today. And, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I had one more slide. I wanted to end on this note. I think it speaks for itself. I'm just going to leave it there for a minute or two. Okay.
Valerie, thank you so much. That was so fascinating. I'm now eager to see when the next convention will be, to see when it'll be happening. We have some questions that have been coming in. The Q&A has been really jumping. But the first question, and I'll switch over to Martha in a second so you all can see her, is I think the hardest, but I'm starting hard and we'll work our way to easy. What separates a good paper doll from an excellent paper doll?
Well, I don't happen to think there are too many bad paper dolls. You create them because they're important to you, and you might be a child and just sort of scribbling, and maybe your costume doesn't fit exactly on your doll, but for you, it's important. Again, if it's in the eye of the beholder, as they say, I could love a particular doll, and somebody else would think, I don't like this so much. So I think it's like any form of art. You know what you like, and who is to tell you any different? Hop in about something like an answer?
Can you hear me? For me, it's all about the drawing. I love anything that's well drawn. So the artists that I really, really appreciate the most are the ones that draw really, really beautifully.
I guess I would just add, and this may be a little too nitpicky, but sometimes I feel like what can put something over the top is the basics, like, do the clothes actually really fit? Because sometimes you'll find they don't quite fit. And also if the tabs are done well and big enough, sometimes I've had paper dolls with little tiny tabs and they just don't quite stay. Sometimes
it's funny, it's true. When I first started doing the paper dolls for Dover, I realized after I did a few books that my tabs were too small. Like I didn't know, so I had to like keep enlarging them until they were about the right size. It is important.
So my answer kind of came from the fact that I'm not a paper doll artist. Valerie and Rudy both are definitely artists, and I just sort of play around at it. So that you have to take my answer into consideration based on that fact.
So I think that leads us into another question then. So we have a large group of friends who are visiting us today, and some of them are collectors, maybe some of them are artists. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get into making paper dolls themselves? What are the basic tools that are needed to start playing?
It's complicated. I think it all depends on your how you want to render them. Like for me, it would be paper and pencil. But for a lot of artists these days, they work on the computer. So it would be a particular computer program. And I don't use most of them. So I'm not well versed in knowing what computer programs work well for paper dolls. But there are a lot of fine paper doll artists out there now doing really, really nice things on the computer. I mean, Corey Jensen, for example, we saw his work in Martha's presentation. His work is beautiful. I think it's all done on the computer. Do you know anything about that? Do you have anything to add to that, Val?
Well, I do kind of a hybrid style. I start by drawing because I don't have the right program computer programs to draw on the computer. I haven't learned how to do that yet. So I usually start with pencil drawing, and then I'll ink that with the pen, and then I scan it into Photoshop and start and like work on the coloring and the shading and stuff on the computer. I just do it in Photoshop. I don't know any other programs. I've heard Procreate is very popular. Julie Allen Matthews, who's works on the magazine as a paper doll artist, she uses Procreate. I don't know if that's the only thing she uses, but I mean, if you want to go the route of making, using like pattern paper, like wrapping paper or scrapbooking paper or something like that, I would say, you can trace around the doll to get the shape for the clothing. Then I would say just, I think the most important thing is the scissors. Like you want to make sure you have, really sharp scissors. Don't use the ones that you've used to like open your packing boxes or, cut your broccoli, like get a good pair of sharp scissors that is comfortable in your hand. And I don't know, that's what came to mind.
I think that all seems like that's great advice. You don't need the best computer program in the world, right? As long as you have tracing paper and you have a desire to make some good clothing, you can always work again and again. A topic that came up that one of our guests asked was about representation in paper dolls, and Renee very astutely noticed that we saw a lot of female paper dolls, but not a lot of male paper dolls. So I guess the summation of the question is, where are the guys?
Well, can I answer that? There's a kind of a joke or a sense of humor in the paper doll world that if you have a collection of paper dolls, you really only need one male doll. Most of the people who play with paper dolls, not all, but most, were little girls. And they wanted the fashion. They wanted the beautiful dresses, the party dresses, so to speak. And basically, male dolls did not have fancy clothes. There were only certain periods of time where they did. And so you only needed one boy doll in order to play with all of your girl dolls. Somebody want to add to that, please?
Yeah, well, that being said, and having been a fashion illustrator for women's fashion and just all my life really primarily drawing the female figure, that's always been my main focus and my main interest, and partly because of the clothing, like Martha was saying. But as I've gone on and done more and more books for Dover, there have been books where I've added the men. I mean, the wedding book I did, had the groomsmen and the best man and the little ring bearer, who was a little boy. I did a Jane Austen paper doll for Dover some years ago that had two female characters and Mr. Darcy and one of the other characters from one of the other books. And the men's clothing in that were very interesting because in that time period, in the 1817s or 18 teens, the men's clothing were kind of interesting and beautiful. So, and there was some color and a little bit of variety. And so, I've been focusing more and more on the men's paper dolls. I really try to include them now. But you're right, it's mostly women. Also, Tom Tierney did a lot of wonderful male paper dolls, and working today is Bruce Patrick Jones, and Bruce does a great men's paper doll, so look him up.
Speaking of fashion, we had a question from Denise who wanted to know that in, I believe, Martha, your presentation, she noticed that the Shirley Temple doll looked like it had a front and a back. And I wasn't sure if that was, just to confirm if that it was the case. But she also brought up an interesting, if anyone can talk about the Tony hair perm kits of dolls with permable hair at home included. Is there, Rudy, you're smiling as if this brings back a very fun memory.
I have a vague memory of that, and it came up recently in a conversation somewhere. I don't know if it was at the convention, but I'm not an expert on it. So Martha, what do you know about that?
The hair perm, Tony hair perm.
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
a paper doll came in it. Is that right?
I know there was a paper doll called the Tony something or other paper doll. And it showed a woman in a beautiful, glamorous outfit, but I don't know that it was connected with the product. In other words, the product didn't come sold with the paper doll. You simply bought the paper doll separately. And I have a copy of it at home, but can't tell you anything more about it than that.
Gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah, yeah.
It-
And what was, there was another question connected to
was the
this
front
about,
and back.
oh, the Shirley Temple. Yeah, Shirley Temple. If you turned the doll over, you would see the back of Shirley. And the outfit that was shown did show both the front and the back. And you were supposed to sort of guess, because I didn't say anything, but you were supposed to guess that you did. You sort of folded the doll over, the dress over the doll. And then you could turn the doll around and you could see both front and back of her dress, as well as the front and back of her. Yes, good comment.
I just want to add about front and back that was a format. There was some of the really early dolls were made that way with the front and back, and it sort of was abandoned at a certain point because it was a lot of extra work and probably wasn't really necessary, but they still would pop up now and then throughout history of paper dolls. It's kind of I find it a peculiar format, but every now and then you'll still find a newer one. So I just got some Japanese paper dolls, and they might be from the 60s or 70s, but they all have a front and back.
So talking about formatting, we've seen a lot of different companies, and Martha, you mentioned a lot that have come and gone. We had a question about Checkerboard Press and if they're still around, but I want to piggyback off of that and also ask predictions. Where is the futures of paper dolls going? What can we expect in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's really tough to say.
Yeah.
It's definitely a nostalgic art form, and I don't think that a lot of little girls are still playing with paper dolls. Hard as we try to pass it on, but I know that I'm still working with Dover, but they're not doing a lot of paper dolls anymore, hardly any, and that's disappointing. But
No, I'm disappointed to hear that because I thought they were going to continue.
yeah, no, they're few and far between at this point. So Jenny Taliadoris, who has Paper Studio Press, she's really keeping the art form alive. She's the one right now, I think.
I do want to point out though that if you say go to Etsy or even eBay or do Google image searches for paper dolls, there's a lot of artists who I feel like there's like a younger generation of artists who kind of discover it, and maybe it's part of the nostalgia that for them it's like a sort of a kitschy, cool, old-fashioned thing. There's a lot of artists who, they might not produce tons of paper dolls, but they might dip into it for a while. I also collect dolls, and I know some doll collectors who have dabbled in paper dolls. It's that there's still people out there just discovering the idea and making them. So I don't know what that says about the future of paper dolls, but it seems like even though as a really popular form of toy or even just art form, it's waned in recent decades, it has never completely died. And like Martha was saying, it's used as a motif in art and advertising and all kinds of things. So I think it's just going to persist and maybe continue in its paper form.
I wanted to mention about Checkerboard Press. I have a collection of Checkerboard Press paper dolls, but I have not seen anything recently come out by that press. So I suspect they're not doing paper dolls anymore. And I second the motion about going on Etsy.com, where if you type in paper dolls in the search screen, the search field, all kinds of wonderful, creative, unbelievable paper doll art is there. In fact, some of the artists that Jenny Taliadoros features in Paper Doll Review magazine, they are artists that came initially from Etsy. That's where they were selling their paper dolls. And then she finds them somehow or other and features them in Paper Doll Review. And eventually they do get published either by Paper Studio Press or elsewhere, but they do continue with Etsy.
So it's a changing medium, and it seems like the work is leaving the hands of the publishers and going more into the artists themselves, which is kind of exciting to hear that anyone can get their work out there and be picked up. I'm going to go on the assumption that you all have very large collections of paper dolls, and I'd like to know, what is the best way of storing these dolls, or how do you store the dolls that you have in your collections to keep them safe?
Well, yes, there are ways that you have to store them. I'm probably not the one that stores them as well as they could be, but there are articles written on the preservation of paper items that you have. You have to make sure that where you put them is an acid-free environment. There are acid-free plastic sleeves that you can insert your paper dolls in and close them up so that they're kept from having grease and dust and things like that attached to them. You have to be careful how you handle them, because every time you handle them, the grease from your fingers gets on them, and be careful not to leave them in sunlight because they'll get bleached. But on the other hand, if you think in terms of the value of a collection, sometimes having really, really well-preserved dolls, which are worth a lot, they're made worth a lot because other people didn't take care of their paper dolls. And so their paper dolls are poor and therefore not valuable. So for collectors, maybe that helps their collection to be more valuable. I don't worry so much about that.
Martha, I'm not a huge collector of paper dolls. I love to create them, but I'm not a big collector. But Martha has a gorgeous dedicated room in her house for her paper doll collection, and she houses them very in an orderly fashion. They're very they're filed and well organized, but she also plays with them. So Martha, I think that you do like the best of both worlds. You take good care of them. You know where everything is because it's all filed and organized neatly, but you really enjoy them, and you are able to easily share them with people who come over to your paper doll room and enjoy them with you.
Oh, thank you, Rudy. I'm very excited to hear Valerie mention the new Facebook page, because I do play with my paper dolls and I do cut them. I get 2 copies of new paper dolls, and I have one that I keep and one that I cut. And then once you've cut it, you discover that there's no place to store it because the dolls are usually on the front and or the back cover. So once you've cut them out, well, where do you put them? And so I enjoy storing them in creating a place to store them. And one of my favorites is one of Rudy's paper dolls, which was Rudy, maybe you remember which one it was, because I'm sure I showed it to you. It was a Renaissance, like a Downton Abbey kind of paper doll.
Oh, maybe.
What was this?
I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Whatever it was, my daughter, who is a graphic artist, also helped me to photocopy parts of it that I could add to the part that I had cut out, and create a little home for these paper dolls. And I wish I had brought it. If I had only known this question was going to be asked, I would have brought it. But anyway, I'm going to put it on that new Facebook page.
we'll maybe save that for the next time that we do a paper doll conversation. It seems like we've had a lot of questions, but I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I think what I will do is commit the free library to writing a blog post to answer any final questions that we didn't get to today, and as a wrap up. So if you check the next few weeks, it'll be at freelibrary.org/blog. We'll handle some last burning issues, and hopefully our presenters won't mind answering a few questions offline. But thank you all so much for presenting. Thank you to all of our viewers who have sat with us. This has been a fantastic program, and I know you definitely have energized me and hopefully everyone watching at home to think, wow, what else could become a paper doll, or what could become a paper doll outfit with just the right patterns that are being cut.
Valerie, if you need a space to meet for your Facebook group, consider the library. Just putting it out there. If it's free and open to the public, you have access to free space in that very room that Chris and Martha are in. Just saying.
All right.
Yeah, anyone who attends will have to wear a sweater though, because the library is kept at about 30 degrees all summer long. And then we go up to a nice balmy 80 in the winter. So, you know. Anyway, thank you all so much. We're going to end the webinar now. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bravo, everyone.
Bye.
Wonderful information. Bye.
Bye.